What would you do if your own children saw you as nothing more than a burden? A walking wallet they could bleed dry, while they lived in the house you secretly owned. For 20 years, I lived that lie. But when my daughter finally went too far, she learned a devastating truth. You should never underestimate a quiet man with a long memory and a perfect plan for revenge. What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. We've all been wronged, betrayed by people we thought we could trust. But what happens when that betrayal comes from your own flesh and blood? Today's story is about the most satisfying, morally justified revenge I've ever come across. If you're ready for a tale of hidden fortunes, family greed, and ultimate justice, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments who you think deserved it in the end. Now, let's get into it. Every morning, my day began with a slam. Not an alarm clock. Those were too gentle. This was the sound of the refrigerator door in my daughter's kitchen, hammering shut like a judge's gavel, announcing another day of my sentence. 6:05 a.m., right on schedule. I'd lie there in the semi-darkness of my first-floor room, the former guest bedroom, now a glorified storage closet for a forgotten old man, and listen to the sounds of a life I was permitted to observe but never truly join. The clink of a lunchbox being packed, the murmur of my son-in-law, Mark, a man whose voice was always a low financial analysis grumble, even before his first cup of coffee. Then came the footsteps, not the light, skipping patter of my granddaughter, Chloe. These were the sharp, purposeful clicks of my daughter, Diana. They'd stop outside my door. There would be no gentle knock of concern. It was a quick, percussive rap, rap, rap. A welfare check designed not to see if I was okay, but to confirm I wasn't dead and therefore causing a paperwork nightmare. At 78 years old, I'd become a problem to be managed, an item on a spreadsheet. The door would creak open. "Arthur, you're still with us." Diana's voice was always flat, a statement of fact, devoid of warmth. It was never, "Good morning, Dad." Never, "How did you sleep?" My response was just as rote, a line from a play we'd been performing for 5 years. "Not yet, Diana, not yet." "Breakfast in 20, don't be late." And she'd be gone, her footsteps retreating down the hall, leaving me to the aching ritual of getting out of bed. My joints would protest, a symphony of cracks and pops, earned from a lifetime of honest work. 45 years as a mechanical engineer for the city. Honest work, steady pay, a modest pension. At least, that's what they all believed. I'd shuffle to the small mirror nailed to the back of the door. A thin old man with a landscape of wrinkles mapping his face stared back. My hair, what was left of it, was a wispy white cloud. My hands, once capable of rebuilding a transmission or sketching a complex schematic, were now speckled with age spots and trembled slightly. They were the hands of a man who needed help. But they were also the hands of a man who held a secret. In 2004, a random lottery ticket I'd bought on a whim turned out to be worth $2.3 million. A life-changing fortune, a miracle. And I told no one, not my beloved wife, Eleanor. She was already sick, her body being slowly stolen by cancer. And the last thing I wanted was for her final months to be poisoned by the vulture-like anticipation of our children. Especially not Diana, my youngest, and my son, William. They were both takers. Every time Eleanor and I helped them, a down payment here, a car repair there, it was never enough. It was a hole that could never be filled.
I knew, with a cold certainty that chilled me to my bones, that if they ever found out about the money, they would devour it in a year. They'd burn through it on luxury cars and bad investments, and then they'd blame me for not having more. So I did the only sane thing a man could do. I kept my mouth shut. I put the money in a high-yield savings account, and a year after Eleanor was gone, when the grief was a constant dull ache in my chest, I used a portion of it to buy this beautiful 3-story house in a lovely suburb of Charlotte, North Carolina. But I didn't move in as the owner. I crafted a story. I told Diana and William I'd found a great rental deal from a landlord who wanted a quiet long-term tenant, a sympathetic old widower. Me. I moved into my own house as a guest, a paying guest. The irony was a bitter pill I swallowed every single day. I made my way to the kitchen, each step a small victory against the stiffness in my knees. Mark was at the table, his face illuminated by the glow of his tablet, his fingers flying across the screen. He offered me a curt nod, a gesture so minimal it was almost insulting. I was part of the morning's background noise. "Morning," I said, sliding into my designated chair. Diana placed a bowl in front of me. Oatmeal. The same watery beige gruel every single morning. No brown sugar, no cinnamon. Half a banana sliced thin to make it last the week. For your health, she'd always say, though we both knew it was for her wallet. "Do you remember William and the kids are coming today?" she asked, pouring herself a generous cup of expensive coffee, the rich aroma a torture I wasn't allowed to share. "Try to actually engage this time. Don't hide in your room like last time." "I don't hide from my own son," I said, stirring the gluey substance in my bowl. "Then why did you barely say 2 words at Thanksgiving?" she shot back, crossing her arms. "He thinks you don't love him." I looked up from my bowl, meeting her gaze. "When was the last time he called me just to talk, not to ask for money?" Mark snorted, not looking up from his screen. Diana shot him a venomous look. "He's a busy man, Dad. He runs his own contracting business. He has 2 kids. "And yet," I said quietly, "he always finds time to call when he needs a loan for a new truck or to expand his operations. It's a remarkable coincidence." Diana's face tightened into a mask of pinched disapproval. "You're being unfair. We all care about you. Who took you in when you couldn't live alone anymore? Who cooks your meals, does your laundry, takes you to the doctor?" "I live in my own house," the word screamed in my head. "I pay you $2,000 a month for a single room and the privilege of being treated like a nuisance." But I didn't say it. I just nodded, the way I had 100 times before. "I'm grateful for the roof over my head." "Exactly," Diana said, satisfied she'd won. The discussion was over. Just then, my granddaughter Chloe bounded into the kitchen. At 19, she was a burst of sunlight in the gray gloom of this house. She was the only one who ever looked at me like I was a person, not a problem. "Morning, everyone," she chirped, coming over to plant a kiss on my cheek. "How'd you sleep, Gramps?" "The usual, kiddo," I said, a real smile touching my lips for the first time that day. "Spent half the night counting sheep, the other half counting my aching bones." She laughed, a sound so pure it felt like a physical warmth in the room. I saw Diana roll her eyes. She'd never understood my sense of humor, or perhaps she just resented anyone else having a moment of joy. "You got class today, Chloe?" "Yep, until 3. Then I've got my shift at the bookstore until 8. She grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl. "I'm off tomorrow afternoon. We could finally take that walk in the park if you want." "Chloe, Gramps has more important things to do," Diana interjected immediately. "The handyman is coming to look at the leak in his bathroom faucet again." "I can do both," I said. "Handymen usually come in the morning." "We don't have a set time," Diana said, her voice final. "You need to be here all day."
I didn't argue. It was useless. Diana always had a reason for me to stay tethered to this house. I think on some level she was afraid I'd die in public and cause a scene. Chloe gave her mother a frustrated look, but stayed silent. She learned to pick her battles in this house. "Okay, gotta run," she said, gulping her coffee. "See you tonight, Gramps." Another kiss on the cheek, and she was gone, the slam of the front door echoing through the house like a sigh of relief. The temperature in the room seemed to drop by 10 degrees. Mark stood up, gathering his things. He said, "Don't forget to check the electric bill. It was suspiciously high last month." His eyes flicked to me for just a second, and I knew exactly what he was thinking. The old man, sitting at home all day, burning through our money. "I hardly ever turn on the lights," I said, a defense that sounded weak even to my own ears. "Just the TV for a few hours in the evening."
"No one's blaming you, Arthur," Mark said, with a smile so fake it could have been made of plastic. "It's just costs are going up, and your pension isn't exactly elastic, is it?" I nodded, thinking of the bank statements hidden in a locked box under my bed. The statements that showed an account balance with more zeros than they could possibly imagine. Elastic. No, Mark. It's a rock, a $2 million rock. After breakfast, I retreated to my room, my sanctuary and my prison. It was small, but I'd made it my own. A bed, a desk, a comfortable chair by the window, a bookshelf filled with well-loved detective novels I reread on a continuous loop. And on my desk, my pride and joy, an antique shortwave radio I'd spent months meticulously restoring. Fixing broken things was one of the few pleasures I had left. It was the only time I felt like myself again, competent, capable, useful. I sat by the window, looking out at the backyard. Spring in Charlotte was beautiful. The magnolia tree was in full bloom, its large, waxy flowers like something from a dream. The grass was a vibrant green. Eleanor had loved this time of year. We'd sit on the porch of our old little house, drinking sweet tea, not saying much, just watching the world wake up. Sometimes I wondered what she would think of my grand deception. Eleanor was honesty personified. She would have looked at me with those clear, kind eyes and said, "Arthur Wheeler, you've turned into a secretive old fox." But then I'd remember the tears she'd cried over William and Diana, the way they'd call, their voices full of false concern, conversations that always circled back to a request for money. They weren't interested in her health, her fears, her life. "We raised takers, Arthur," she'd told me once, her voice thick with a sadness I couldn't soothe. I don't know where we went wrong. Maybe, I thought, she would understand.
The sound of a car pulling into the driveway shook me from my thoughts. A black, oversized SUV. William. My son climbed out, followed by his wife, Brenda, and their two teenagers who were already glued to their phones, their faces blank slates of teenage indifference. William was 50, but looked older. His belly strained against his polo shirt, his hair was thinning, and he carried himself with a permanent air of stress. His contracting business was, as far as I could tell, a perpetual motion machine of financial crisis, yet he always drove a new car, and his kids wore the most expensive sneakers. I went out to meet them. Diana was already at the door, her voice pitched an octave higher, performing happiness for her brother. "William, so good to see you. Kids, my goodness, you've grown." The teens grunted in unison. Brenda and Diana exchanged air kisses and hollow compliments. Then William saw me. "Hey, Pop."
He walked over and gave me one of those awkward back-clapping hugs men use when they feel obligated. "How's the health?" I said, "Still above ground," with a forced smile. "Good to see you, son." We moved to the living room. The kids beelined for the couch and their screens. The women vanished into the kitchen. William and I were left alone. "How is business?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Tough," he sighed, shaking his head. "Real tough. Competition is brutal. Clients want everything for nothing." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Listen, Pop, I was thinking, you don't have any, spare cash lying around, do you? I need to upgrade my work truck. The transmission's shot. If I lose the Henderson job, I'm sunk. I'll pay you back with interest, swear." There it was. It hadn't even been 5 minutes.
"William, you know my situation," I said, the familiar script falling from my lips. "I'm on a fixed income. I pay your sister rent, utilities." I know," he said, nodding too quickly. "But maybe you've got a little something stashed away, a rainy day fund. This is a monsoon, Pop." I looked at my 50-year-old son and saw the 10-year-old boy who'd cried because his bike wasn't as cool as the neighbor's. The same pleading eyes, the same manipulative whine. Nothing had changed. Nothing at all. "No, William," I said, my voice firmer than I intended. "I don't have a rainy day fund." His face darkened instantly, the friendly mask slipping away. "I see. Okay. Well, it was just a question." The rest of the visit was a masterclass in frosty tension. William barely spoke to me. The grandchildren might as well have been furniture. They left right after a tense lunch, citing some vague emergency. The moment the door closed, Diana turned on me. "What did you say to him? He looked furious." "The truth, that I didn't have the money to buy him a new truck." She shook her head in disgust. "Did you have to be so cold? He's your son. He's trying to keep his business afloat." "And I'm trying to make it to the end of the month on a pension that I'm giving a chunk of to you," I fired back. Her lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line. "You live in my house. You eat my food. It would be weird if you didn't contribute, don't you think?" My house. The words were a physical blow. The sheer, audacious ownership she took of something I had bought and paid for. The utter confidence with which she believed her own fiction. "Of course," I said aloud, my voice hollow. "All is fair."
That night, sitting in the dark of my room with the soft sounds of old blues whispering from my radio, I heard them through the wall. Diana and Mark discussing me. "He's so stubborn," Diana hissed. "He must have something saved up. He worked his whole life." "His pension is pathetic," Mark's voice grumbled. "But the utilities are high. He must be running that ancient TV all day." I looked at my reflection in the dark window pane, an old man with tired eyes and a secret that was starting to feel less like a protection and more like a poison. 20 years I'd carried this. Sometimes I asked myself, was it worth it? Would it have been better to just tell the truth from the start? But then I'd remember the greedy glint in William's eyes, the cold calculation in Diana's, and I knew the answer. No, the money wouldn't have made them better people. It would have just disappeared faster, leaving a trail of resentment in its wake. It was in these quiet, lonely moments that I missed Eleanor the most. She was my compass, my conscience. What would she say now? A soft knock pulled me from my thoughts. "Gramps, you awake?"
It was Chloe. "Come in, sweetheart." She slipped into the room, looking tired from her long day, but still managing a smile. "How was it, Uncle William's visit?" she asked, sitting on the edge of my bed. "The usual," I said. "He asked for money for a truck." She rolled her eyes. "Shocker. He never just visits, does he?"
"He's got his problems," I said. A weak defense of a son I couldn't defend. "That's no excuse to use you," she said, her brow furrowed. "Mom's the same. They both act like you owe them something." Her perception astounded me. She saw the truth with a clarity that her parents, in their 50s, had completely lost. "Your mom takes care of me," I said, the lie tasting like ash. "She takes care of the money you pay her," Chloe corrected gently. "I'm sorry, I don't mean to talk bad about her, but she could be nicer." I smiled and took her hand. "You remind me of your grandmother. She always told the truth, too, even when it was hard." Chloe's face softened. "I wish I could remember her better." "She would have been so proud of you," I said, and I meant it. "You're the only one in this family who isn't obsessed with money." "Maybe because I've never had any," she laughed. "It was hard to be obsessed with something you never had." We talked for a while longer about her classes, her job, her dream of being a writer. Then she yawned and stood up. "I should get to bed. Big day tomorrow." She leaned down and kissed my cheek. "Night, Gramps. Don't let them get to you." When she left, the silence felt deeper, heavier. In the quiet darkness, I made a decision. This couldn't go on. The lie was suffocating me. Diana's greed was a constant acid drip on my soul. It was time for a change. The very next day, on my morning walk, I saw the sign. It was planted in the perfectly manicured lawn of the Jacobsons' house down the street. A for sale sign. And standing next to it was a man in an impossibly sharp suit talking on his phone. I didn't plan it. My feet just carried me over. "Hello," I said when he finished his call. He turned, a brilliant, professional smile instantly appearing on his face. "Good morning. Raymond Price, Charlotte Premium Realty." He handed me a card. "Interested in the property?" "Just curious," I said. "I live in the neighborhood." I gestured vaguely down the street. "Wonderful area," he said, following my gesture. "One of the best in Charlotte. If you're ever thinking of selling, I'm your man. The market is absolutely on fire right now." "Really?" I asked, feigning ignorance. "What's a place like this even going for?" He squinted, assessing the Jacobson house. They're asking $825,000, and they'll probably get it, maybe more. Multiple offers are the norm these days." He glanced past me, his eyes landing on my house. Now, a property like that, 3 stories, original details, that lot size, that's a real gem. My heart began to beat a little faster. "What do you think it's worth?" "Without seeing the interior, ballpark." "Whoo!" He whistled softly. $900,000. Maybe push $1 million if the kitchen and baths are updated. A place like that won't last a week on the market." $1 million. The number hung in the air between us, shimmering with possibility.
I thanked him and continued my walk, but my mind was racing. $1 million. Freedom. No more watery oatmeal. No more accusations about the electric bill. No more paying rent to live in my own home. I could sell the house. I could buy a small, comfortable place of my own. A place with no memories of Diana's scorn or Mark's condescension. I could live my final years in peace, on my own terms.
The idea, once planted, took root and grew with terrifying speed. That evening, the final piece of the puzzle snapped into place. Diana came home from work in a thunderous mood. She threw her bag on the kitchen counter and glared at me. "Did you transfer the rent?" she demanded. "On Monday, as always." "And the increase?" she said, her voice sharp. I looked up from my book. "What increase?" "The $500 extra we talked about, for utilities, for the increased cost of everything." We had not talked about it. She had declared it. I had said I would think about it. "I thought about it, Diana. I can't afford it. My pension isn't elastic, remember?" Her face flushed an ugly red. "So you expect us to just keep subsidizing your life? That's not fair, Arthur."
"I'm paying $2,000 for a single room," I said, my own anger beginning to simmer. "That's more than market rate for a whole apartment." "It's not just the room," she shouted. "You use the kitchen, the living room, the yard. You consume utilities." "I pay for utilities separately," I shot back, "and that number keeps magically going up." "You use more than you think," she countered. "And even if you don't, taxes go up, insurance goes up. This house is a money pit, and someone has to pay for it." I took a deep breath, the plan solidifying in my mind with every word she spat at me. "I realize it's expensive, but I can't pay more. If you need extra money, maybe you should ask William. He could—" "William?" she laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Are you serious? He's drowning in his own debt. Unlike you, he has real expenses." The implication that my existence was not a real expense was the final straw. "I have expenses too, Diana," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Medication, doctors, which are mostly covered by insurance," she dismissed me. "Don't play the poor old man with me, Arthur. Where did all your money go? You worked your whole life. You were always so frugal. Where is it?" I looked at her, my daughter, and I saw a stranger, a greedy, cold-hearted stranger. So I told her a half-truth, the first step in my new plan. "I spent most of my savings on your mother's treatments. The rest, life is expensive, Diana, especially when you're old." She stared at me, her eyes narrowed to slits. "I don't believe you," she said bluntly. "You're hiding something. You always have. But you know what? I'm done. Here's the deal, Dad. Either you increase your share by $500 a month or you find another place to live. I will not subsidize you at the expense of my own family's security anymore." The ultimatum hung in the air, cold and absolute. She was evicting me from my own house. I looked at her, this woman I had held in my arms, had read stories to, had loved with every fiber of my being. Now she was my landlord, issuing an eviction notice. "Are you kicking me out?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I'm setting fair terms," she replied, her voice like ice. "This is business, Arthur. It's nothing personal." "Nothing personal?" I stood up, my knees protesting, but my back was straight. "I see. Give me a week to make arrangements." "There's nothing to arrange," she said, her final blow. "Pay or debt out." I walked out of the kitchen without another word. I went to my room, closed the door, and took Raymond Price's business card from my wallet.
My hands were steady. The decision was made. I dialed the number. "Mr. Price, this is Arthur Wheeler. We spoke the other day on Elm Street. Yes, I'd like to discuss the possibility of selling my house." I didn't wait a week. I started packing the next morning. My life, distilled over 78 years, fit into 2 suitcases and a cardboard box. It was a pathetic summation of a lifetime. Chloe found me, her eyes wide with horror. "Gramps, what's going on?" "I'm moving out, sweetheart," I said, my voice calm. "Your mother gave me an ultimatum. I can't afford her terms, so my choice is pretty clear." "This is so wrong," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "She can't do this." "In some families, money is the only language they understand," I said, taking her hand. "Don't worry. I found a small apartment downtown. It's perfect for me."
I'd already taken care of it. A 1-bedroom in an old brownstone. Clean and simple. The rent was a fraction of what I paid Diana. The freedom would be priceless. Chloe helped me load my things into the cab. "I'll come visit you," she promised, hugging me tightly. "I'll be waiting," I said, "but don't tell your mother where I am. Let her think what she wants." As the cab pulled away, I took one last look at the beautiful house I had bought for my family. The house that had become my gilded cage. The irony was so thick I could taste it. The apartment was exactly what I needed. Mine. I unpacked, put a photo of Eleanor on the bedside table, and sat in a worn but comfortable armchair. A wave of emotion hit me. Sadness, relief, and a fierce, burning determination. The game was over. Now came the reckoning. My meeting with Raymond Price was swift and professional. His eyebrows shot up when I explained the situation, that the tenants were my family, and they believed I was just another renter. "A delicate situation, Mr. Wheeler, but not unheard of," he said, his professional demeanor quickly masking his surprise. "We can handle everything discreetly. We'll notify them that the owner has decided to sell, and they have 30 days to vacate after closing. They never need to know it was you." It was perfect. The house went on the market. The response was electric. Raymond called me daily with updates. 12 showings in 3 days. Multiple offers. The plan was working with a terrifying, exhilarating efficiency. Meanwhile, Diana called. Her tone had changed from demanding to wheedling. "Arthur, where are you? Maybe we were too hasty. We can talk about a smaller increase, $250? I could almost hear the panic in her voice. The loss of my $2,000 a month was causing seismic shifts in her precious budget. "I'm settled, Diana," I said, my voice neutral. "I've signed a lease. It's quiet here. No one monitors my electricity usage." "But you can't live alone. It's not safe." Ah, there it was. She wasn't worried about me. She was worried about her cash flow. The calls from William started next, full of bluster and outrage. "You're throwing your own family out on the street? For God's sake, Dad, why?" "I sold my property, William, something I have every right to do." "But why didn't you tell us you owned it?" he roared. "Because you would have done exactly what you're doing now, reached out your hand and demanded your share." The conversation devolved into accusations and threats. I listened, my heart hardening with every word. He didn't care about me. He cared about the asset he thought he'd lost. Then came the call I knew was coming. Raymond had informed them. The phone rang. It was Diana. I took a deep breath and answered. "What the hell is going on?" she screamed, her voice trembling with pure rage. "Some realtor was just here. He says the house is sold. He says we have to move. This is a mistake, right? You messed up the rent." This was it, the moment of truth. "No, Diana," I said, my voice calm and steady. "It's not a mistake. The house has been sold." Her confusion was palpable. "But how? We've paid rent on time. I need to talk to the landlord. We can make an offer." "Diana," I interrupted her, "you don't understand. There is no other landlord." Silence. A long, dead silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the gears in her brain grinding to a halt, trying to process the impossible. "What? What did you say?" "I said, the house has always belonged to me. I bought it 20 years ago, with lottery money. I was never a tenant. That was a lie." The silence that followed was deafening. Then a whisper, "No, that's impossible." "It's the truth. I lied because I knew if you and William found out about the money, you'd hound me for every penny until there was nothing left. And I was right, wasn't I? Every conversation, every visit, it always came back to money." The dam broke. Her shock turned to fury, then to a kind of sputtering, incoherent rage. You monster! How could you do this to your own family, to your own daughter? You're throwing us out on the street." "I'm not throwing you out," I corrected, my voice cold. "I sold my property. The property you were charging me rent to live in. The property you threatened to kick me out of. Remember what you said? Pay or get out? Well, I got out. Now it's your turn." She called me every name she could think of. She said I'd die alone, that everyone would hate me, that Chloe would despise me. Her words were meant to wound, but they just washed over me. I felt nothing but a vast, empty tiredness.
"I'm already alone, Diana," I said quietly. "I have been for a long, long time. You and William were never around unless you needed something. Your threats are about 20 years too late." I heard her start to sob then, real tears of shock and fury. "It's not fair. We took care of you." "You took care of my money," I said. The truth. Finally, gloriously free. "You don't even know what my favorite book is, Diana. You don't know what I'm afraid of. You were never interested in me, only my wallet." The conversation spiraled down from there, a toxic whirlpool of accusations and pain. I finally ended the call and put the phone down. My hands were shaking, but my soul was calm. It was done. The sale closed. I walked away with $875,000 after fees. The first thing I did was buy a small, single-level house on the other side of Charlotte. It was perfect. No stairs, a big garden for me to putter in, a sunny porch for my chair. I furnished it with things I liked. I bought a new, comfortable armchair. I saw a doctor, a good one, who told me I was in excellent health for my age. The constant stress of living with Diana had been the unhealthiest thing about me. I set up a trust fund for Chloe, a secret nest egg for her education and her future. She was the only one who deserved it. A few weeks after they'd moved into a cramped, expensive apartment, Diana showed up at my new house. She got out of her car, her eyes taking in the well-tended garden, the new porch furniture, the palpable sense of peace. "Arthur," she said,
her voice tight. "Nice place." "Thanks."
"You look good," she said, and I could hear the surprise and the resentment warring in her voice. "Less stress," I replied. She tried then. She actually tried to offer a half-hearted apology, to suggest we be a family again. I looked at her, my daughter, and I saw right through it. "You didn't come here for me, Diana," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "You came here because you found out about the money, because you realized you'd lost." She had no answer for that. The mask slipped completely. "I thought you'd be miserable," she spat, turning back to her car. "I thought you'd need us, but you seem just fine on your own." "Yes," I said, looking at my house, my garden, my life. "I am." She drove away, and I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I would never see her again. And in that moment, I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel joy. I felt free.
We all have lines, boundaries that when crossed, change everything. For 20 years, I let my children cross mine. I allowed their greed to dictate my life, to shrink my world, to make me a prisoner in a home I owned. I thought I was protecting myself, but all I was doing was delaying the inevitable explosion. Revenge isn't sweet. It's bitter. It's the ashes of a relationship you once cherished. But sometimes it's the only way to clear the ground for something new. It's the only way to reclaim your soul from people who think they own it. My revenge wasn't about the money. It was about the truth. It was about finally standing up and saying, "I exist. I am more than your ATM, and I will not be treated this way anymore." The cost was high. I lost my children, but I found myself. And in the end, after all those years of living a lie, that was the only thing worth having. So what do you think? Was Arthur justified? Was his revenge too harsh? Or was it the only language his family understood? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What's the most satisfying revenge story you've ever heard? And if you believed he deserved to take his power back, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about justice served. Thanks for watching.